physical being that are considered to be like an interdimensional shapeshifter. And then there's other ones that seem to be able to vanish, and like we don't have the ability to like really see where they're at or where they're coming in from. So there's so much to explore with this. It's really interesting. I see General Shinobi is here with us now. Welcome, General Shinobi. What's happening, Toby?
Let's all give Toby One Kenobi a warm welcome. It's an honor to have you on the show, dear brother. For those of you that don't know, he's a researcher. He spends a lot of time with words, decoding the meaning and the subtle essence behind the way the words manifest through our consciousness. Also, he's a bit of an activist at heart, and he likes heavy metal, and he's a father, and he's a homemaker. So and he's self-employed. So there's a whole lot of cool things about Toby. I like to call him Toby One Kenobi or Toby One Shinobi. It's an honor to have you on, the brother. For those of you that haven't checked his channel, it's in the recommended channels. Go and check it. Welcome, dear brother. And I just want to respond to what you said about the thing. You know, I think that both are true. Indy, I think that there are beings that manifest bodies. Yeah, they might be interdimensional, extra-dimensional beings, and then I think there are interdimensional beings as well. So I think interdimensional beings might be seen as them, but there might actually be extra-dimensional beings that actually manifest their bodies through portals. This is just something I thought. I think both might be true in different instances. Welcome, dear brother. Please fire away.
Yeah, what's up, guys? No, I think what you started talking about there is quite interesting, Franklin, about interdimensional portals and stuff. So, I mean, if you've got more to say about that, carry on. I'll just jump in a bit. But yeah, happy to be here, and I hope everyone's doing well. Looking forward to having a little chin wag with you guys.
Well, the basic idea that I have is that there are these extra-dimensional beings. Well, let's first say that there are interdimensional beings that we experience, and we see them through our peripheral vision, as Cosmic says, but we apply meaning to the beings based upon vibrational association of our unconscious sort of recognizing qualities. Well, there's a human-like quality, an ape-like quality, this kind of quality, but it's a big, very powerful being. So it's got like a big form, and we might associate that with an energetic being and see that as a cryptid. Then I think that so that's like one kind of a cryptid, I think, which is not a physical being. Then I think that there probably are physical cryptid beings that have physical bodies and forms, but possibly they have the ability to jump between different states of reality, right? And maybe they can come here, and maybe they can go elsewhere. Who knows? Or maybe they're trapped here. Maybe they come from elsewhere and they came here and they got changed by being here, and they're trapped here and they can't get back. But these beings sometimes have supernatural abilities. So it makes me think that they may have a connection with other places. There may be portals that they can use. These are just me making wild guesses, shooting into the dark, as it were, because I don't really know. We don't really have many cryptids. I know that there are some cryptids in South Africa. For example, let's go and take a look here. So we have the water bobian. That's a water baboon cryptid, and it's 6 foot tall, ape-like creature with reddish fur, observed near water sources. This is something that has been seen. Then we have the otang. The otang, they're like a very big, maybe 7 foot, hairy bipedal creatures, and that's only seen in the Knysna forests. The interesting thing is these creatures are seen in only very particular places. You don't see them everywhere, right? There's some places where you see the Vata Bobian, and there's some places where you see that being in, and I think it's the same in the US, isn't it, Indy? Like there's particular beings seen in particular places, and those beings aren't seen in other places. They're seen there. And you go to another place, and there's a particular being seen there. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we have the Jersey Devil up in like the northeast corridor, and then we have like the Chupacabra down in the southwest, and they don't really cross over to anywhere else. So it's definitely a thing. I'm sure there's a bunch more that I'm not mentioning as well.
So we got Mothman. I think somewhere. I think that's like an East Coast thing. Yeah, there's a bunch of different like cryptids like based on areas, and Bigfoot is more of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, but they even have him in Florida, and he's the skunk ape. They just have different names for him and stuff. But there's actually the Thunderbird sightings that are in also parallel with the pterodactyl sightings, like from Texas over here to North Carolina along this part of the I guess it's like the latitude. Yeah, this latitude. They see them all across.
Thursday night.
Which is pretty interesting. A lot of people claim that they came swooped down and ate their dog and stuff. And it's pretty intense. I've also heard that in the Congo, they have a similar account that there are these thunderbirds or pterosaurs that come from the sky and usually attack people near bodies of water because they usually eat fish. So when people are near the water, they attack the people. But there's also giant spiders that are said to be in the Congo, which fascinate the heck out of me. And the accounts are like so scary. Like they talk about how they have these huge webs, and if you touch the web, you won't be able to escape. And they hide in these little holes, and they come out, and their span of their feet is about 6 feet across, and they're absolutely massive, way bigger than anything we've seen before in science or public mainstream understanding. But there's been so many different accounts of them. Somebody actually got an image of them on a video recently, and it's kind of in the shadows, but these things are horrifying. But like in the places like that, like here I live in the Smoky Mountains, which is a 300 million year old temperate rainforest. So there's stuff here that's been around for a really long time that might not have been discovered yet. And the same goes for the Congo and other rainforests. People don't really go into the deep forest.
What about shadow people? Like, where do they fall into it? Because I've seen shadow people before, but can they like interact with us? Because when I was seeing them, they were just standing still, not moving at all. It was really, really weird, and I'm just wondering, like, do they latch on to us, or are they just like harmless?
I also wonder maybe shadow people are just people from alternate universes and dimensions, and we just see their shadow. But I've also been thinking that shadows could be just sort of like darkness elementals, essentially, that they might manifest from shadows, dark rooms, pitch black areas, and stuff like that. Because I've been thinking about from like sort of a metaphysical perspective that in a way, a room without its lights on is kind of like a portal to the astral plane, because when you're in a space that's completely dark, there's really, in a visual experiential sense, there's no ground or sky or anything like that. So it's like anything in your mind can sort of manifest, and I think that's a prime like portal location for shadow people to essentially manifest. It's something I've been actually also been kind of interested in. I have another friend who was really into shadow people and stuff like that.
I call them the jinn, just because, and it's interesting, like, going back to the original question, to Toby, I do know that they have interacted with people, and I've had clients, and there's okay, so let's back this up. I've had friends who've been attacked by them, and they're fairly grotesque attacks. I've had people I've known who've almost that these things have attempted to rape them. I've known people that have been raped by them. I know some of them have got red eyes. I've seen some with red eyes, but they keep their distance. They're very rare. Normally they're just shadowy, like they like black. They humanoid beings, but they're just black, right? And it's like almost a movement of shimmering inside the darkness. If you look closely, like inside the darkness, it's like a shimmering. Well, not with light though. Does that make sense? It's like just it's there, but it's not there. It's like it's a weird kind of a texture. And then my experience with them, I found junctions, places where you can see them easily, and I took friends to see them. I went and took friends there, and you say you saw them. You might have been standing next to a bus stop. Oh, their bus stop. Maybe they were waiting for a bus. I know this sounds weird. You laugh, but I've been to places where they're like going everywhere. They can't see me. It's like there's places where I've looked at them and I don't think they can see me. They're going about their business. It's like they're on a busy market road or something. These ones are going that way, and these ones are going there, and they're all traveling in similar directions. And I'm like, where are they going? And they're on their way to work or something. So you can watch them. And I've taken groups of friends and we've watched them, and they've been like, what is this? What are these moving shadows around? Just watch. It's like crazy. There are places here on Table Mountain where you can go to watch them. I used to go, but you see them more easily at night for some reason. Normally, although they've got beings as well. Some of them have got like beings. You speak of giant spiders, Indy, that's scary as heck, man. That's a cause for arachnophobia for sure. 6-foot spider, dude, that would give me clampers. Clampers, bro. I'd be getting clampers because I'm okay with spiders, but a 6-foot spider, I don't know how I'd be able to relate to that being so well. I might have to get my katana out. Like, help me relate to it better, you know. But I don't know. Maybe there's some work for me to be done there to relate to that consciousness. But I'd feel safer with my katana, to be honest. But yeah, you know, these beings, I have an experience where a portal opened when I was young. When I was about 15, 16, they tried to open a portal near me. And it was in a studio, a pottery studio. The lights were off. The lights, I couldn't turn the lights on in the studio because the lights in the studio ran to a backup switch, which was in the house, right? So you had to hit that main power switch to be able to access the power, because I had helped my mom's ex-boyfriend build a studio at our home, right? And he was a potter. So we'd built him a massive studio at home, but he had rigged up the power so that the power had a double safety cutoff in the house, if that makes sense. So you had to turn the power on in the house to access power outside. And he had done that just in the event of crazy weather, somehow water getting in or whatever, just double safety, because he had good common sense. So he did everything very carefully. He was a builder, and so he knew what he was doing. So I was outside and my dog first alerted me. I felt a presence and my dog was going crazy, and she was like, rah, 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 rah. But I didn't know that it was an energetic spiritual presence. I thought I was going to face someone to fight. And so I was like, it was pitch dark in there. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but I could move really silently. And I thought there were gangsters in there. So I went in there to face them in the pitch dark, knowing that I had the edge because I can fight in the dark better than they can. I can see in the dark better than they can. I can move through the dark more quietly than they can. And I'm going to have the edge. And I know that space, right? So I went in there to try and like confront whoever was in that space, thinking I'd be able to, I've got good hearing and night vision better, even though the night vision was useless in there because it was that dark. But my hearing and my sense of smell is strong. So I figured I'd be able to hear them and smell them and find them and deal with them, right? And my dog wouldn't even come in there. And so I went in the dark because it seemed more sense that they might have a knife or a gun or something, right? But that would be less useful to them in the dark. So my brain did all this math, and I was like, I'm going to go confront them in the dark because I'm comfortable in the dark, and I bet you they aren't. You know, I always felt very comfortable in the shadows. And I went in there and I could smell it. I was like, what the? It was like a weird metallic, funny kind. I've never smelled that smell. It's like sulfur metals, weird smells. And only later on that I realized, oh, people who have seen extraterrestrials have spoken about those smells. I was like, those are the smells I smelled that time. And then I noticed there was a light starting to spin in the room, and there was a sound like a woo, and I saw this portal this light starting to become bigger, and it became bigger and bigger, and it was like a portal. It was opening. And I saw it was blue light, dude. By the time this light started, then I could literally see in the room. How's that? Pitch dark room. And I went woo 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 woo, and it got like that sound got louder and louder and louder and louder, and there was this weird sound, spinning kind of a sound, and this thing started to open up. And there was blue light. And as it got bigger and opened up, I could see the room with this light there. My dog was outside freaking out. And I was like, that's where the smell was coming from. Whatever this thing is. And I was like doing my maths. I was curious. I was like, I wonder what it is. It looks, and then it started to form like a portal. And I saw through the blue, I could see beings standing on the other side of this portal. And then I realized, hold on, those beings aren't human. I couldn't really see them properly, but I could see shapes of these beings, like humanoid shapes, through the portal. And my instinct just went crazy. And I knew I had learned how to use my key accidentally. And I just decided in that moment I was going to devote all of my energy to strike this portal with my energy as hard as I could. And I attacked the portal with a full power, with all my key that I could, with a strike. And as I hit that, there was a popping sound and it closed. So I think that those jinn exist, like Cosmic says. And I don't know that those were the jinn, but my gut says to me that might be what it is. Maybe they were trying to open a portal, but to be honest, that could have been something else. You know, I don't know. But those human-like forms were similar to human size on the other side of this portal. That was like, there was like a blue haze in the portal, but I could see them. And I could see that the shape of the portal was becoming more and more shaped. So I reckon that those beings exist in a parallel sphere, but we can see them here. But some of them can interact with us, and some of them can't see us. But I think some of them have the ability, just like some of us can see them, and some of us can probably interact with them. I think some of them can see us and interact with us. And then there are those with the red eyes. And those ones are particularly, according to a lot of people I know, have had like very bad experiences with the ones with the red eyes. So that's my limited experience of that, what you're talking about, cosmic, like beings that maybe are coming through portals, dimensional fields, and they're able to open up some kind of a passage that they can travel through. And then the jinn, which I've seen much of my life, and they've got creatures, they've got familiars, they've got like funny kind of flat spider things that crawl on the wall. Have you seen them? They're funny flat things, and they go on the walls like quickly. And there's smaller ones and there's big ones. Some of them are big. They're like, I can't explain them. They're not exactly a spider, but they're like a flat kind of a thing that crawls on the walls. And they usually go where there's like power lines. You'll see them where there's like power boxes, you know, electrical boxes. They seem to be drawn to the electricity somehow. And you'll see them around those boxes more than you'll see them where there's no electricity. And I've seen those beings mostly in places where there's like people living with lots of properties and electricity. But sometimes there are places where the veil seems thinner, where you can actually see into their world. And those aren't ones that are interacting with us. Those are just like looking at them, like going about their daily business. So that's the limit of what I can share.
Do you think that the veil's becoming more thin, or do you think that perhaps something's being done, like either at CERN or otherwise, for more beings to sort of come into this realm? Like, is it natural? Is it a natural cycle? Because I can, in my mind's eye, I can see this AI being in relation to this, but I can sense that in the not so long future, like perhaps a couple of years, perhaps it'll be 6G will be some kind of part of it. But I think that this realm's going to be filled with more entities, and I think AI is part of that. And I don't know if it's natural or not that we have cycles where the veil's thinner and then there's more kind of traffic, but I can definitely sense there being more traffic. Have you noticed that at all, any of you guys? Like more
Like more
presence?
spiritual activity going on, more entities interacting. I think there's definitely some truth to that. I think even my Fae friends even mentioned that it's like because of all this like stuff with like, you know, the UFO stuff, like there's all these like portals like opening up right now. It's just like they just kind of like jumped into the world. But yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like, you know, the it kind of fluctuates depending upon the situation. Like we can kind of let entities in, or we can kind of cast them out depending upon, you know, what our metaphysical perspective is at the time, what Zerfaxes and Zerflexes we exist in, and all that stuff. So, yeah, there definitely seems. I think, and a lot of that too, you know, is also opening the fact that we're basically exploring different aspects of consciousness, not just in terms of space, but like AI. So there's all these untapped sort of fields of entities and spaces that humans have never really sort of got into before. And it's like, yeah, there's definitely seems to be like all the channels are opening up, and it's like Pandora's box is like, you know, revealed itself essentially. That's kind of what, yeah, there's definitely a Pandora's box opening that I've kind of felt in the past 10 years when it comes to, you know, all matters spiritual and entity wise.
Do you think it's like a natural process, or do you think that there's a like it's being done on purpose, like with CERN, with AI, with these data centers? Like, you know, you say you've noticed it the last 10 years, but do you think it's going to start ramping up? So I don't know why. I think maybe I've seen it in some like films or TV series with like more phenomena. Like maybe I can just, that's why I can sense it, because sometimes they put these things in films and series to kind of prep us, like they've done with AI and technology and stuff. But do you think that yeah, so I think it kind of relates to transhumanism as well. Perhaps like some of these beings want to use us as vessels. Perhaps that has something to do with it. But like speaking of, like, I'm not sure if you've talked about ancestral war, but it seems like we're right in the middle of one now, in regards to what I've just mentioned with AI, this artificial data centers, using loads of water. Is it because they know there's going to be more beings and stuff? Is it going to be off-world or beyond world beings? Because I've heard that these data centers are actually to power underground cities and stuff, which is interesting. Like, do they know that something's going to happen on the surface? Are we going to have lots of like interesting stuff happening here that could be UFOs, could be most likely, well, definitely interdimensional stuff? That's what I can sense, is that there's it's an interdimensional war that we're in, that we're just getting into, and I think that we need to be prepared for it. Like, people will say it's blue beam, others will say, oh, they're UFOs and stuff, but they're going to be interdimensional entities, and not all of them are bad. Some will be good, but I think that the good will be demonized, and the bad ones will they'll say they're good, you know, because there's certainly other other beings and forces that we can work with, like you do, Cosmic, and that perhaps that there's a kind of, I mean, I don't know, like, what if the Fae got? I'd be interested to know what the Fae have to say about that. Like, do they feel closer to this realm or further away, or do you feel closer to their realm? Or like the world's kind of like entwining at the
So
moment?
this is the way I kind of described it, because I was actually talking about them with this yesterday. The whole idea of what they call Clizerfax magic, which is basically, the idea is that, so we exist in our Zarfex, right? And they have a Zarfex that's next to ours. And so the idea is every Zarfex is surrounded by a dream astral. So if you think about like the physical part of the realm as like the actual physical like planet, and the astral realm is essentially like the atmosphere that surrounds the planet. So Zarfex, you think about Zarfex like that. And the idea is you're supposed to take our dream realm and connect it to their dream realm. And that by connecting those different dream realms, it acts as a bridge that allows them to access basically our sphere of influence over here. That's basically how because it's interesting, like, it's not like typical astral projection. I've realized, and the Fae have told me about this too, that the way I interact with this realm is not the typical one. It's not so much that like I float outside of my body and enter a different realm. It's more like I am aware of an extra dimensional space that exists outside of my vision. So it's almost like, for example, like if you're walking around like, a park in the middle of the day or something, and you look towards like the trees along the skyline, you think to yourself, oh, there's that school I know that's behind there. Oh, there's that one house that I saw. And in your mind's eye, you can kind of like picture that. But with me, it's more like everything that I exist in, like the room I'm in right now, is just like the only thing that exists in my universe. And then everything outside of that small little bubble is the Fae realm. And then that's where the Fae come in, interact, talk with me. And it seems to be from an extra dimensional thing, because it seems to be what they whisper to me in my ears will oftentimes also automatically happen like in real life. So for example, like there's different spirits will have different synchronicities. Like Raslidia, for example, will show up as a squirrel. And then there's another Fae named Vizuka, and she associates herself with the number 23. And I swear to God, dude, every time like she like talks to me and I really feel her presence strong, I'll look at a clock and it says 23, like consistently. So there's this sense that they're kind of they can in a way interact with our reality. And like, but they do it in a way, these interdimensional beings, they do it in a way that exists outside of our normal understanding of cause and effect. So it's not so much like a, A to B to C to D, where there's like a kind of like a progression of linear time events. It's more like they affect the entire meta of reality as if it always existed. So think of it like this. Instead of like, let's say for a hypothetical person, I want to manifest an apple out of thin air, right? And the idea was there'd be an empty space. I have a mental intention, and then the apple appears out of nowhere. Well, it seems to be more like it's like there's no apple, but instead of making an apple materialize, that you instead get shifted to a dimension where that apple always existed. So in a way, it's kind of like the Mandela effect, or like some of these people who report that they, are on the wrong timeline, and, a certain movie thing is sort of basically like, incorrect or whatever. And I think because they interact with our world in that kind of space outside of causality and time, it can look as if, see, that's what I've realized too, is that when these entities manifest things, they have to do so in a way that conforms to the logic of this world. So it seems like it's sort of plausible to exist. Otherwise, it's basically like a reality glitch. Now, I think I might have mentioned this particular story I had on the podcast, but it was definitely a very jarring experience that I had, and it was a dimensional jumping experience. And people talk about jumping into dimensional timelines, and I tell them, be a little bit more cautious. So let me set up the stage here. So it's around like 2019, and I'm going to my grandmother's funeral, right? And I'm going to the wake. And for proper understanding of the situation, I also had this aunt who was the sister of the grandmother in question. And I was told that like several months earlier that she had died and went to the funeral. You know, my parents went to the funeral, and like, you know, I didn't think much of it because I wasn't like that close to her. So it's like, you know, they'll go and I can just stay home or whatever. And I was convinced that this aunt of mine was dead, right? And so when I went to the funeral, the wake, she was sitting there alive, dude. And I was like, what the hell? I thought you were dead. I was like convinced this woman was dead for like more than 6 months. And here she is alive and conscious. And for a second there, I was like, oh my God, I actually jumped a timeline. I'm in, like, what the hell is going on? I legitimately freaked out. And so I talk about this to my folks. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I thought you told me our Aunt Ginny died. And they're like, no. It was your Aunt Jean. Like all of a sudden, it's like the universe like created this Aunt Jean that I never heard of before, that I never even knew existed, like some other obscure relative of the family. So the point is, I feel like if things are going to manifest, they manifest in a way as if they've always existed. It's not like it's going to be here one day and then the next day it's going to be gone, or vice versa, or something's not going to be here and it's going to be there. It's basically you're shifting to a universe where that intention is already manifested, rather than you living in the universe and manifesting your intention. It seems to work in a way where it seems like it's always been there. Like it has that kind of meta outside of time aspect. So I think that when entities interact with our world, they interact with it in that similar kind of way. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've had similar things happen to me with quantum leaps, timeline jumping and stuff. The past life experiences altering the course of history, and like kind of it's in such a way where like you don't remember the old ways usually that things would have happened. Now you have this understanding that the way that's happening now was always the way. And so I've had experiences with that before, and usually I'm the only one. Everyone else just remembers the new way that was never there before for me. And I think in a similar way that happened for you in that situation, you didn't know about this lady until then. And then all of a sudden for you, it was a shock. But for everyone
Yeah,
else,
exactly.
you didn't even know. Everyone else know.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think to me, that usually points to the fact that something that you did made things change, and they got whisked along with it. They got changed with it, but you were like the catalyst of the change somehow. So, and I think a lot of it comes from being inquisitive about stuff. It's like wondering, like, wait, this doesn't seem right. Whereas, like, I think a lot of people just go along with it. They're like, oh, this must be how it was. And other people will question things like, well, this doesn't seem right. There's something else that was there. And then, like, once you think about it, it starts to come back to you like, wait, there was this other thing that's not here anymore. So I think it's possible to uncover these things that they try to hide if it's something that's happening and it's being consciously done. Although I feel like it's something that happens like spontaneously that we can control, but people aren't very aware of. Because when you can control this kind of thing and make it happen, other people aren't going to be able to sit with you and talk to you about it. You're going to have to like feel like you're crazy or something and deal with it on your own. Whereas a lot of people, I don't think, want to be in that state of being, so they just pretend that it didn't happen. But I'm cool with it. I like to be able to see what happens and like see if I can make shifts and stuff. So, but going back to something that Franklin mentioned earlier, like how powerful is thought, and is thought like really intense and powerful compared to like the energy of the body. And I feel like some thoughts have like so much power. Like I've had such powerful thoughts before that like it like moves me from what I'm doing, and I like get up and like get out all this stuff and like start to like write it down, and like these thoughts are like probably channeled information, something like that. It feels like something that where everything connects all the dots.
Or think of it from this way, like imagine like a time where you were really tired and like really exhausted, but then somebody like pissed you off and got on your nerves, and all of a sudden you're filled with all this energy, you know?
Yep. There's that dormant energy that's like laying dormant, that's like ready to be like livened up in us, and that those emotions that we have that can cause a trigger. And I've always used that energy for my labor work that I do. Like if I feel like it's really hard to lift something, I'll just touch on a little bit of my fury, and it'll make things, it's like, oh, I could like throw this thing through the roof right now. It's good when you can be able to channel that energy in good constructive means with cathartic means and stuff. Although it can be hard to do, but once you practice that more, I found that it can be really helpful for things, and
Yeah,
can become a
I
hero.
find. Sorry, Andy. Yeah, I find thoughts are like I kind of equate it to like rowing, like moving like through the waters. Because like I use with my thoughts, I use etymology to kind of like to guide my ship, to guide my mind's eye. So I'll be like, oh, thoughts. Oh, like it's thoughts is like, it sounds like force. So therefore thoughts is the force which kind of moves us, or that creative force as well. Um, and when I'm at work listening to podcasts, like listening to conversations, I'll be listening to the conversation, but I'll be like, I won't be in the conversation. I'll be like branching out as far as I can go. Like I don't know if it's channeling, but I certainly get a lot of information from somewhere else just by like some trigger words, for example. Um, and it gives me energy, like using this, using the thoughts as the force to propel my mind or expand my mind is kind of like it's kind of like a toroidal. Like I soak it in, and then I branch out. It's really difficult to explain, but like I think I've made quite good progress the last 5 or 6 years into like researching a hell of a lot of stuff, because I've tried to fast track my learning, and that's why I've tried to find what is like, how do I know what's true, or what's real, or how do I guide myself rather than getting lost in certain narratives, certain theories or conspiracies and stuff. And that's why I always try to find the essence. And how I get to the essence is just keep digging, keep rowing, keep moving, try to get to the depths of whatever it is by using symbology, etymology, and stuff. And when I listen to conversations, people will be talking about things, and I just take a couple of little things. Like they'll be talking about one thing, even if I can tell they're like a controlled opposition and they're just waffling about most of it's I know not to be true, there'll be a couple of golden nuggets that I'll use to branch out with other knowledge I have, and I'll use my thoughts to propel me to places that I've never been to, like other realities and stuff, not actually physically being there, just imagining, like imagination. Like I think, yeah, thoughts and imagination is very, very powerful. It's the most powerful energy there is, because like in the beginning was like everything is created from thoughts, like even the universe, like before anything is a thought, before anything is spoken into existence, it's a thought. It's just the pure potential. That's where everything is, and that's the blackness, that's the unseen, which is everywhere all around us, and we can tap into that. And it's a kind of inward outward thing, because we have to kind of, it's expansion, but it's going inwards using our intuition and our imagination. And at the same time, it expands us. Like when I'm using my thoughts or imagination, like I feel so much lighter, like I feel energized. um like having conversations like this, or when I'm at work listening to podcasts, like sometimes I forget to eat because I don't need to eat, because I'm getting energy from the thoughts. The force is what drives me. So I think that it's underrated, our thoughts and imagination. And I think it's the greatest weapon or tool we have in this day and age, with the artificial and AI and this quick fix of like knowing what stuff is our imagination. I think perhaps that's why disorders like ADHD and autism and stuff have sort of been weaponized, and children are being drugged because they think outside the box. And we've had a conversation before about um, how thoughts can basically interfere with technology. Like Cosmic, you brought it up before with like what was it? I'm not sure if you can remember. It's to do with like oh, you probably can't remember. It was a few weeks ago. Um, it was something to do with like this random generator and
random nodding.
Consciousness interfering with it. Like
Yeah.
we're interfering in reality with our
It was
thoughts.
an app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just finish up. So that's why there's so much done to suppress our thoughts, to literally map our brain, to map the human brain, like Apple are doing. They want to know what we're thinking before we think, and this relates to the ether as well, the aether or the etheric field, that the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious, the formlessness and the form, is the morph, is the creation, which is done by our thoughts. The thoughts is the morphing, and that is what they the likes of Elon Musk, Bill Gates, the parasites called the elites in the world, they want to know what we're thinking before we think, so that when we think, they're not actually our own thoughts. That is sort of where we're heading with AI and stuff, is that
It's way
they
more
wanna,
sinister than that. It's not
well,
just
yeah,
that they want to program us. Like literally, it's like the idea is if you can turn someone essentially into a blank slate, you can essentially like put your intentions into them and program people what you want. But in order for that process to happen, there has to be like a hollowing out first. You have to remove the original content, remove their mind through, doubt and fear and all these other things. So that way they become trusting of that force, and then they become a willing thing. And I think that what I've realized with AI, there's a kind of like I was mentioning earlier, I was talking about how in a lot of times magical systems, one of the reasons why they're so hard to get away from in cults is that some of these cults actually give you some real power, and you may not want to necessarily give up that power. And I think artificial intelligence is really that. It gives people an artificial sense of intelligence, because what the AI really is it's like an external brain. Instead of using your brain to come up with ideas and thoughts, you're taking this external brain, whereas the actual brain, your mind atrophies and withers away because the robot and the AI is doing all the work. And they've been finding out that like when it comes to like school and stuff, like literacy rates are dropping down and like grades are getting poor. Like kids are actually getting stupider because of artificial intelligence. And the thing about artificial and like computer and AI is it's very easy to think that, what's the capital of so-and-so country? And they think, oh, it's so easy. I can just look it up on my phone. It's there. But if you tell them to do that without the phone, they're just like, So in a lot of ways, what AI is doing is it's giving people a false sense of their own intelligence. It's tricking people into thinking they're smart when they're actually becoming dumber because they're doing none of the work themselves. They're not doing any of the intellectual legwork of figuring out ideas, nor are they engaging with their own imagination to understand reality. So in a lot of ways, what the AI is really doing is it's basically they're turning us into AI. Essentially, that they want to make you into an artificial intelligence that they can program and put into a prompt. Because I think in a lot of ways, that's really what cults do, is that they basically kind of remove all the software from your mind and your soul, and then they basically type a prompt into your consciousness, and that prompt then becomes your new belief system and becomes your new what you think is real and what you think is false. So really, like that to me is like, it's not just that it's like, they want to like control us with AI, but like they want to make us into AI themselves in a way.
Well, it's interesting if you look at AI like as the letters, the A and the I, and if you look at the dollar bill, the I is removed from the pyramid, like the I is removed from its roots. That's no coincidence. And you have 13 as well, like 13 steps relating to mem or memory, as well as 13 bloodline families. But it's interesting with the A and the I being the 1 and the 9, because with the Enneagram, you have the 1 to the 9, and that's to do with the archetypes and potentials as well. I think that's perhaps a hero's journey, the going from the 1 to the 9 and back through the black to the 1 again, and it's a cycle. And with the AI, this kind of artificial, it's giving us false archetypes. Like it removes these other, like it's a natural process. These 9 archetypes, the well, I guess from the Ennead as well. You know, the Ennea being the 9. But it's interesting that AI is also a singular I, like a singular point, a singular observer. Because it kind of, this kind of singularity we're heading to is like this hive mind. So that kind of relates to what you're saying, Cosmic, where we kind of get our information from the cloud or like servers or whatever, rather than tapping into our mind or the all mind. And you know, the Enneagram mapping the planets as well, which we can tune into because they're frequencies or planes. This is why Starlink is creating a barrier between us and the heavenly bodies, because they're trying to put a wedge between the formless and the form. Here in the matter is the form, and when we tap outside this realm, beyond the firmament, beyond the solid mind, kind of thinking out of the box, we can bring things into this realm. But I certainly believe that Stargate is part of that, to kind of put a wedge between us and the other heavenly bodies, for sure. So I think it's interesting to look at the sort of the A and the I being the A and the I being a 1 and a 9. You have the singular I being the singularity, which is kind of centralized, which is outside of us, like a central I, like Palantir, the all-seeing I watching us, rather than our central I, what observing and creating reality. And I think it's so symbolic that the capstone is removed on the dollar bill, because the pyramid is an A and the I is an I, and it says on there, in God we trust. Which God? And it says he'll be so pleased with our plans and our undertakings. It's because with our energy, we've been building this AI, we've been building this artificial reality with our energy. That's what we've been doing. It shows you on the dollar bill.
Wait till they make artificial emotion, then we're really screwed.
Artificial, is that even a thing?
I don't know, but I'm sure that, like, here's the thing that I've been thinking about. The reason that AI isn't truly sentient is because it's only thought and intellect. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have any emotional content to it. Because I think about when you go through life, it's not a singular process. When you think about things, usually you're picking between two options. So it's like, you know, do I eat the ice cream or do I not eat the ice cream and go on my diet? You're in a position where you have to pick between your discipline and your desire. Computers don't operate like that. They don't have a desire. They just automatically pick the path of least resistance and just go with whatever is the most logical. They don't think like that. And because they don't have that open, it's all very linear. It's just point A to point B to point Z. And it's just made, because it's so complicated, it only creates the illusion of sentience. But I think in a weird way, there's a kind of an upside to this, just from like learning from a perspective, that I think that if an artificial intelligence isn't conscious, then to me, that would essentially prove that, thoughts in the brain can't alone explain what consciousness is. Because, if they say it's just like an algorithm, because that's basically the materialist theory of consciousness, is that we're just kind of like this random algorithm that amalgamated from different states of matter that just kind of, formed consciousness, out of its own. And they think that, and to me, to see that there are these computers that basically, they seem to talk like human beings, but they really don't have any soul, that actually kind of proves it basically, to me, in my opinion, actually proves materialism is wrong. And that there is a sort of the possibility of what they call a philosophical, zombie or whatever.
What was that about a zombie?
Philosophical zombie is the idea that somebody looks and appears conscious, but they don't have any actual inner sentience. Like it's basically a fancy term for an NPC, essentially.
Right. So that would be the realm of shells that Steiner spoke about.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense.
So, because like the eighth sphere, I didn't know what it was, and I've not looked into it other than it's just the realm of shells, and I can kind of just work that out. But it's funny because the eighth sphere sounds like eight Sophia, and that's literally what it is. It's the eating of our wisdom. It's the suppression of the sphere in replacement of the cube, the Minecraft of, like, does that make sense?
Yeah, there's some. I've been thinking about like how that the Minecraft like sort of narrative is sort of making people think more about like cubes and sort of like ordered, like organized ways, because it's interesting when you think about the world as being pixelated. Like, I think that kind of reinforces materialism, because materialism is basically the idea that like everything is just atomic pixels that build things up. And the thing is, because this ties into this whole, the Fae talk about the void Zerfikes, which is basically the atheist materialist one. And the idea is that the Zarfex is split into the two main zones: the Zarfex interior, which represents physical reality, and the indeterminate zone, which is the astral spiritual plane. And what the Ozerfikes does is it completely voids out that indeterminate zone. So it's just the Zarfex interior. Well, the point of that, like you were mentioning before, Toby, about the shells, and I think that's what the powers that be, they want us to do, is they want to hollow out our personalities and who we are, so they can kind of like, fill it up. And I think that's another thing I've noticed in culture lately, when it comes to either not just like, entertainment and architecture and art. It seems that in general, a theme that I've noticed is that it's not so much that maybe there's like a lack of soul, but a lack of personality. Things don't seem to have as much personality anymore when it comes to our entertainment, or even just how people are. Like, I feel like it's like some younger people and like stuff like that, and don't have as much personality anymore. And I think there's something about that personality, that soul, that they're trying to either like take for themselves or sort of like hollow out, because that personality is the thing that says, no, I'm not going to put up with this bullshit. I'm not going to, put up with this indoctrination. So if you can get rid of that personality, that spark, then you can put in whatever you want, and basically they can turn you into their automaton.
Well, yeah, that's what they did in 2020, because it was in October, it was event 201, which is boa or ba, either boa constrictor or ba being the human-headed bird in Egypt. And the ba would relate to your identity or your like personality. And with what happened in 2020, that was about extracting the identity or personality. That's why there was so much cult-like behavior, and people are probably bored of hearing people talking about it, but there's so much depth to what happened, so much psychological manipulation done to, like, standing 6 feet apart, self-isolating. There's this, that, so much done, and whatever happened, it extracted people's identity, and that identity is what relates to our dreaming and imagination as well, I believe, too. It's all part of the process of extracting that. So that's the bar. And then the car, the vital essence or life force, it seems, is to do with this energy crisis, and that this energy crisis is multi-layered, as is everything. It's energy as in petrol, yes, but it's also energy as in us. Like they're trying to do so much to extract our energy, like our chi, our vital life force, that protects us. And what I mean by that is that if we don't have a field around us protecting us, that we're going to be more susceptible to manipulation, because you know it was dark magic. What happened in 2020? It was dark magic, and they've tried doing it again with meningitis a couple of months ago. Now hantavirus, and the amount of people sharing stuff on social media, absolutely destroying that narrative, is amazing, because that didn't happen in 2020. But now they keep rolling out things, and people keep, like, there's so many decoders, like, to help people see, like, what's really going on. So,
Yeah, and I think it also kind of opened up this idea of expert culture, because one of the things that was going on with COVID was the idea that you alone did not have the authority to sort of determine these things, for yourself. We have to defer to the experts, defer to the people that, but I've realized when it comes to, I think I talked about this in the last, podcast or whatever, that, anybody can have like a badge or, expertise and, be an expert and have qualifications or something. But having expertise and qualifications is not really what makes you a good scientist in that sense. To me, being a good scientist is somebody that is willing to admit they're wrong if the evidence says so. And I think that these so-called experts were not willing to listen to counter evidence. They weren't willing to listen to the other side. And when they're not, then that's how you know someone is not really being scientific, by the way. If you prove their theory wrong with clear evidence and they keep backpedaling and moving the goalposts. So don't let the idea of like qualifications or expertise, confuse you. There has to be something that backs them up. In the same way, like if you think about like Christianity, for example, a lot of people will talk about, faith in Christ and love in humanity and serving people. But, anybody can say they're a loving person, but maybe they're not really so loving in real life, because it's like people, I think they have a certain expectation, but they don't actually meet the reality of it, right? They're not actually sort of the thing. And with science, there's an ideal in regards to being objective and being honest. But I think most human beings are still biased, and they still have their, proclivities and, favors towards things. So they'll, still be illogical. So, and I think in general, it's a bigger part of the culture and the situation that we're dealing with, because I think that's kind of like a deeper problem that's not just it's more apparent in 2020 for sure, but it's been with us since antiquity. The idea that you got to trust the experts, you got to trust the scientists, the priests, the magicians, the gods, and never your own judgment. And to me, like a lot of people, when they talk about my Fey magic stuff, it's like, oh, you're like an anarchist, you're like, anti-society, you're selfish because you're coming up with rules for yourself. And it's not so much that I want to be like, some kind of elitist or something. I just want to understand existence on my own terms, because I don't like the idea of somebody holding unknown knowledge against you. So the idea like you're in a religion and you thought you were a good person your whole life, and then you realize like, nope, you're actually sinful because you did and now you're going to hell. And like you want to know what you're doing, and being able to discern reality for yourself is important, because truly manipulative people, if they want to make you crazy, is they want to make you doubt your own perception, doubt your own judgments. And I think that with this COVID arm prick adventure, that is a very prime example of something like that happening.
I really love that name is caught on. The arm prick adventure.
It's catchy, I admit it.
The COVID arm prick adventure. Yeah. It's like we had to be so careful about what we said a while ago, didn't we? Because like you say the wrong words and like, you know, you get shot like off of the internet. He has been removed from the internet because he said the wrong word. But yeah, arm prick adventures it's like a fun thing. You tell a story, you tell the kids. Once upon a time, kids, there was an arm prick adventure, you know, and it's all fluffy and it's sweet and it's soft and it's gentle. Only there's a dark side. There's a little witch who lives in a cabin, you know. The dark side of Baba Yaga, for example. But yeah, you know what you guys are talking about, the energy, the harvesting, the Harvard sting, right? The scientists come with their Harvard sting, right? Harvesting your energy with their science. The arm prick adventure, like it's all part of a harvesting campaign. And energy, you know, if we think about it, like, okay, so it's our inner G, like OG, you know. But G is an interesting sign. If you think about what a G is, look at a capital G for a moment. Look at a small g. A small g is a spiral that comes out of a point and gets bigger. It's a golden phi, right? Starts with a small thing, it gets bigger and bigger. It's a phi. The big G is a big G that's becoming a small spiral, right? So a G is a spiral. Like the Freemasons with their G. You're like, well, what are they talking about G? I think G has got to do with the pentagram, the hidden ood to the pentagram, to the mathematics of the pentagram, the scalability of the pentagram that basically fits it into a fractal scale of itself. And like, if you know this, like if you draw a pentagram, you draw your apex 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So imagine that those are the lines. Imagine imagine it's just an earth banishing, right? So it starts like that. So you've got your two sides, and if you take the third 1, 2, 3, 4. If you take the fourth line, which is the crossbar of the pentagram, and you draw a line from that crossbar, right? That will be the point of the next pentagram within that point. And then if you draw the line of that pentagram down, the next pentagram will form. So they scale, and those all fit into a perfect scalability. And that happens to be in sync with the phi golden spiral, which is really interesting if you just look at the dynamics of how an pentagram, and then the pentagram, of course, has 72 degrees on one side and 108 degrees on the other side. So we've got the quinence of the 72 for the zodiac, and we've got the 108 of the Vedic school of, you know, the astral sciences and the etheric sciences side by side. So the pentagram is a unifying structure. So we go back to the G representing the golden phi spiral, which is perfectly shown in the pentagram. Hence, it's the most stable structure that there is, right? It's why we make pentagonal shaped forts, the star forts with pentagons, because, well, it's the strongest structure that there is. The walls are less likely to collapse if you bombard them, if it's got that angle, right? That particular angle of a pentagon shape is the strongest. Hence, that's Pentagon in the USA, right? They didn't do that by chance. They did it because it's the most likely kind of a building to be able to survive a missile strike because of its shape, literally. So that G, energy, right, is related to the forces of gravity of what is existence manifesting, which is like God, pressure, and that inner G, that release of inner pressure is the substance of your soul. So when we speak of energy, we're actually speaking of the soul. If we think of like where the word associations are. So any energy that's being moved is got to do with your soul, whether it's electricity, which is quite interesting if we think about what that implies with regards to the way that we live wastefully in the modern day and age. Yeah. Like we've learned to be very wasteful of energy. And so we waste our own personal energy falling for ploys, right? Like the ploy of employment. And so we give our life's blood to a corporation that uses our service to make loads of money and then pay us a little wage. I mean, for those of us that aren't thinking out of the box and going, hold on, let me be my own employer. If I'm going to be employed, bloody hell, I'm going to be the employer. Like, if I'm going to fall for any ploy, it's going to be my ploy. I know that the money ploy is a bit of a bummer, but I've got kids, so I've got to focus on like getting food for the kids, and it's a big sham, but I don't want my kids to be like suffering like the hunger side of the sham, right? So like there's going to be a ploy. Let it be my own ploy. I'm not falling for your ploy or his ploy or her ploy or their ploy. But so it's quite interesting when we look at this energy harvesting system, which is like the economic system, isn't it? And so economics is eco. So what is eco? Well, eco is ecology, right? So we've got ecology, right? Ecol. And then we've got econ. Oh, econ. Oh, the con of energy. Conning you out of your energy. Economy. And economy is quite interesting because like econ of me. I'm the one being conned here. Everybody who's being conned, I'm being conned. This is called the economy. So like they've really got us dancing around their shapes of numbers that decides the value of what we've got. When in actual fact, like who the hell are they to decide what the value is of what we've got, right? Who is some banker to decide what my time is worth? Well, they get to decide the economy. They get to decide the value of money through the games they play with investment. And then they decide what the money of our currency is worth, which is then going to decide what my time is worth. So it's like a really interesting game that's really been like running for a long time. That must be why, like in the Bible, it says, "Give unto Caesar that which is his," right? Don't give him your time. Don't give him your labor. Don't give him his own money. Yeah, you can keep your money, man. Like we don't need it. Like it's gold. Yeah, it's all cool. Like I can't eat it. Like I'll rather just go into the field and grow some apples for my kids or whatever, because that's to me like worthy. But we've been sort of conned into believing that we need to follow their systems, which is also led us to the path of education, which is like how they get our mental energy. And then as if that's not enough, they then have to harvest our spiritual energy through religion, right? So like, what legion are you in? Which religion? So get us all into like a military legion so that we can have this legion against that legion against that legion. Which religion are you in? Well, in this legion. Are you against that religion? Yeah, those religions are enemies. Can we go and get them? Yeah, God has ordained that you can get them. There's a weapon, set them like fighting with each other, So a lot of wars have been fought over this religion business. And I think like the energy harvesting is something that they are refining now to get to like a fairly acute level. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth while I wait for my Two things. I'm buying a kettle and I'm making cocoa on the stove because kettle's busted and I should have bought one last week and I didn't. And I was like, that's it. I've been too busy with work and not busy with the other things. So I'm going to quickly
I
buy a
also
kettle.
think with like the word religion, it's like the part of the word implying that there was a legion and then they tried to recreate that legion, because often that's kind of what a religion is. Someone will have some kind of mystical visionary experience and then the religion will try to recreate that understanding, implying like you have a mystical experience, you form a legion with the entities, and then religion is trying to recreate that legion through stories. And it was a thought that just came to my head.
Yeah, religious sounds like really jealous as well. And that's
Yeah, it
why
does.
there's so much fighting between religions, because you're like, that's not the true God. My God's the true God. But really you're jealous that they have a different perspective of you, because otherwise you wouldn't really care. That's what it comes down to. You're jealous in one way or another, because why would you care? Like, they're not you. Let them get on with it.
In a lot of ways, like I've been thinking about religions like bubbles, and disproving a religion or fighting against religion is akin to, popping said bubble. So if you think about religions and as sort of egregoric organisms that are sort of like fighting for their survival, for one thing to be true, it kind of kills the other religion. So they're literally, in a sense, fighting for their survival in this kind of like, king of the hill type deal. And I think honestly, we gotta like, we as individuals gotta be like, no, we're not part of this fight. We're not part of this battle. We're not going to be in the crossfire of this thing, because I think when it comes to this situation, in this story of the world, like I never felt like I was necessarily like on the good side fighting the bad side. I'm like, oftentimes I find myself feeling like I'm sort of in the middle and of two sides fighting each other, and neither side really seems good. But there's a lot of people who are just kind of like, I don't know what's going on. They're just sort of like, self-aware and stuff like that. So I think in order to like, we have to kind of learn to get to that meta reality or whatever. Not the Zuckerberg one. That's the, obviously that's the fake one. I just bought more land in the metaverse. Not that meta, but that like the outer Zarfek stuff I'm talking about, or you guys with like the the spiritual planes and the other extra dimensional realms. And like, it's important to have that outside perspective, because I think when you spend too much time on the inside, too much time in this world, you forget there's a world outside, and you really start to lose perspective, and you start to think that, everything here is like so important. And it's sure on some levels it is important. But I think sometimes that importance gets so great within us that, when that importance is so valuable that we're willing to like fight and kill over it and harm people over it just because we want to feel special or important, then I think that's a point. It's like, okay, maybe we need to think of ourselves as being a little bit more insignificant, like, and I don't know if people like that idea or not. I guess people have different points of view, but and by insignificant, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but just small on the cosmic scale of things. Not to say that you're not part of something, that your existence isn't meaningful. But I think that sometimes when you put yourself, like, I think about like Atlas, right? Atlas's burden was that he has to literally carry the entire world, on his shoulders, right? And I don't think we need to like, and sometimes by taking this world too seriously, we kind of burden ourselves. And I think Oscar Wilde, like, he had a quote, I think one of my friends like was always interested. It's like, life is too important to take seriously. And I think there's something to that. And I think when it comes to like, got what you guys are talking about with like the COVID stuff and all the powers that be, they really want you to take life seriously. They want you to take it so seriously, so terrifyingly stark, and oh my God, the world is ending. And that there's a fear energy in that, And so I think that, being open to mystery and open to the unknown kind of like it's a way to like remove the spell or demystify a lot of this stuff because it just seems small and insignificant. And I've been thinking about from a symbolic perspective, you know, with the Fae, because in most like stories and literature, they're always portrayed as tiny. And recently I've been thinking that the reason they're portrayed tiny is because their perspective is that the universe is so vast because they're small and the world is big to them. And that what that symbolizes to me is having a perspective that the world is massive and vast. And you think about like giants and like the reason that they're always kind of portrayed as like, you know, oafs or buffoons is because they think they're the biggest thing there is and that there's nothing bigger than them. And so we're just kind of being like, you know, portrayed by like giants because it's like I was thinking, you know, like I always kind of like I know I'm more of the skeptic in this round table here, and that, you know, when it comes to talk about giants and the Nephilim, I don't know if I can believe in literal giants, but I can certainly see that there were definitely at least metaphorical giants that we had to deal with, or at least giants that existed within your subconscious. I mean, I'm not going to get into a debate whether they were real or not, because obviously you have your opinions, I have mine, and that's not really, I don't really care about that. But
Cosmic, what do the Fae have to say about giants? Because didn't the Fae and giants coexist with dragons not so long ago?
I'll have to ask them. It's not something I've talked to them about.
Let us know what they say.
Yeah,
maybe that'd be an interesting conversation, because it is interesting that you believe in the Fae, but you don't believe in giants.
Well, it's let me explain what I mean by that. It's not that I don't believe in giants. It's that I don't believe that there are giants that took on literal physical bodies in this physical space. I can see them existing in the indeterminate zone, but not necessarily within the Zarfex interior. So the Fae, they don't have an existence where they can be comprised of physical particles or atoms, but they're pure consciousness. So I can see giants existing as like dream realm type entities interacting with our realms. As for history, well, I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe they were real. Maybe they weren't. I mean, it's not entirely impossible that there were, you know, larger humanoids. I mean, they found skeletons of people that are 12 feet tall. But to me, it's like it's not really even relevant anymore. You know? I mean, even if even if all you guys are saying is true, it's like it doesn't like invalidate anything I'm saying. It's like it's there regardless. So
Cosmic.
So with the giants themselves, I'm not sure. I'll have to kind of like inquire more on that.
I think this is really relevant, and it's a relevant point, because I believe that the Fae existed here, giants existed here, dragons existed here, water beings existed here, and now we have us. Like, we have us and the animals, but perhaps they're still here, they're not over there. I mean, like the Fae or dragons and stuff, we can't see them in this realm anymore, and that's a problem. I think
it's because they are extra dimensional, like the entities we've been talking about. So I guess, yeah. But
my point is that these beings used to protect us. They used to protect this realm, and then now we can't see them, so people don't believe in them. So therefore, their power in this realm isn't what it used to be. What about that?
I think, I mean, it's not that I don't think that there's any truth to that, but I guess I think of spirits existing in a different way. So the idea is that there are sort of like there's physical entities, and that there are sort of these more like astral. So there's entities that exist within the Zarfex interior, which is more the physical half of reality. And there are entities which exist in the indeterminate zone, which are more like your Fae, your dragons, ghosts, etc., etc. And we're kind of like we human beings are like the bridge between these two worlds, right? So in a lot of ways, it's like in a lot of ways we have seen these entities before, but I think it's a lot of it is because we had more of a higher dimensional perception, perhaps. Because you think about think about it from a Zarfexological standpoint. Like, I think it's a helpful way of understanding like consciousness. So if you believe in materialism and that all there is this 3D reality, you essentially only perceive existence as one Zerfax, right? There's one universe around you, and that's pretty much it. But if you believe in a magical universe, you believe in God and spirits, then you probably have to contend that there are at least two Zerfaxes in existence, a Zerfax for the physical world and a Zerfax for the astral and, etheric realms, etc. And even perhaps even a third Zerfax for God to kind of like tie it all together. So in a way, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, with these entities that I'm talking about help us to achieve that dual Zerfax consciousness. So the reason that people can't see them anymore is because their perception only allows them to see the immediate Zerfax in front of them. This is what the void Zerfax does, is it basically takes your third eye and essentially like blacks it out with tar so you can't see anything. And that's what happened. We're all third eye blind, right? That's what's happening with people, with media and what we're taught in schools. That's what I was talking about earlier, Franklin, about how beliefs affect reality, because we've been taught all this skeptical stuff. Because you have to think about it, another thing, because it makes sense energetically too. It's not just that you're being taught that entities don't exist and that there are no spirits. There's also a sadness that comes with it, and an anxiety about death, and like just like an empty, depressing feeling. And that energy is more the thing that kind of cancels out. And that is a psychic intent. And that's like essentially like in magic, like when someone does like a mute spell on you. So the idea is like when the boss would do like a mute spell, you couldn't perform any of your magical attacks. You can only do like, physical attacks. So in a lot of ways, what's going on from my perspective is that we are only taught to perceive reality with one Zerfax. Whereas I think ancient people with who more were open to spirits could perceive more Zerfaxes, right? They could perceive an additional Zerfaxes to perceive these additional realms. So you think about it like, if I can perceive with one Zerfax, I have this 3-dimensional realm. But if I have two Zerfaxes, I can perceive two 3-dimensional realms, essentially giving me 4th-dimensional perception. And I think that 4th-dimensional perception is what the elites are trying to take away from us. They want to get us to lower dimensional, back to a basic 3-dimensional realm. Because you think about it, 3 dimensions is less complicated than 4. And if it's less complicated, that's easier to control. So that's how, I'm not saying you have to believe my take, but that's how I conceptualize those. So it's not so much that I say they're not real. It's more that they're not real in the way that you think they're real. I have a different conceptualization of how it's like they exist, but I see them existing in a different way, existing in a different aspect. So it's not that I don't believe in giants. It's that I don't know if I believe that they existed in the way that you think they did. If that makes any sense at all. I don't know if it does. But yeah, that's basically, but yeah, that's kind of like how I have to clarify, because it's not that I don't believe, because it's like, it's hard when you believe that everything is a multiplicity instead of a singularity. You have to like think differently about how you understand how you believe in something. It's like, it's interesting that when you believe everything is one thing, it's very distinct. Oh, I believe this, I believe that, but when you're perceiving multiple realities simultaneously, you're just kind of like, I don't know, man. It's really mind-boggling. So I think that's how I would understand what was happening in terms of that, because I think that, with different perception and sort of entering this sort of empty, because if you think about it, it's like, from my perspective, like a dream realm, it's like we've been kind of cast into a shadow realm, a kind of a shadowy version of this reality that's basically created by this kind of like atheist materialist, whatever. And I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, but yeah, basically like so the Fae exist for me in that particular way, because ultimately I'm an idealist metaphysically. I believe that consciousness is the primary, motivator for things, but I think that there's also more complicated aspects that create these material realms, which the Fae refer to as solid Zarfexes, and that basically there's like physical entities and there's astral entities, and they kind of exist in their own biomes in the same way, like, a penguin is going to exist in Antarctica and a camel is going to exist in the Sahara, and not the other way around. You don't see Saharas, the camels existing, in frozen wasteland. Likewise, you don't see penguins, hanging out in the pyramids in the Egyptian desert. So that's the way I look at it. And that's more what I'm saying. It's not that I'm saying that camels aren't real. I'm just saying they never existed in the North Pole. If you understand by what I mean by that metaphor.
Well, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate that when there's pole shifts, what if there were camels in the North Pole? Because we know that there's pyramids.
And that's the other thing too. In Zarfexology, everything potentially exists. So it's a lot of ways these realities, they have existed in a sense, but in a way, you believing them has in some sense actualized them. You, by believing in them, you brought them into existence and gave them life, right?
Well,
see, that's what I've been talking about. So I don't, and that's the thing about spirits. It's complicated because it's like, it's kind of one of those chicken egg kind of conversations, because it's like, okay, maybe people come up with that these gods are like collections of human thought, but then if time isn't linear, and then maybe that this is a thought form that came from beforehand, you don't know where it began or where it starts. So when I'm skeptical of things, I'm not skeptical of them in the same way that like a Richard Dawkins, for example, would be skeptical, where he says it flat out doesn't exist. For me, it's like I put things in specific Zerfaxes and specific spots in Zarfex space, and I say, this probably exists here and this probably exists there, but it might not exist over here. So I'm skeptical in a different way, and I just wanted to kind of clarify, like, when I say I don't believe in things, what I actually mean by that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned space, because I always view space as like energy, or like S being like a light wave, and then pace, because we measure space by the pace of light, and that ties into the fourth dimension as well. And then what I was talking about with the flipping of the poles, because the only difference between a camel being in the North Pole and the South Pole is time, because over time the climate shifts, and by climate I mean the psyche, like the human psyche, or like on the bigger, broader off-world spectrum of things, they shift. And perhaps now we're kind of at a shifting point where there's beings that should be somewhere else, but they're here, if that makes sense. So you're using the analogy of a camel and a penguin, but what if now these camels and penguins are kind of flipping because the climate is shifting? And it's not shifting, it would shift slowly over time, but something's happened to speed it up, if that makes sense. So perhaps this is what I was saying about, like, I can sense that there's going to be beings in this world that shouldn't be here, and
here's another way to conceptualize it. All right, so let's kind of like use a thought experiment here, and let's just take these two different universes that we talked. So we have one Zerfax A. We have a universe where giants and all these things, they're all just metaphorical. And we have universe B, where they are, basically literal. So in Zarfexology, they're saying both of these things fundamentally exist, like sort of outside of time. And we as human beings choose to align ourselves to which one. Do we align ourselves to the skeptical universe, or do we align ourselves to the believing universe? And I was thinking about this too, like, because we talk about like time and time being an illusion, something, because I think about it. If atheists believe that time started from the Big Bang, and Christians believe that it started with, the Bible or whatever, aren't those essentially two different, if those are two different origin stories, then those are two different beginnings of time, two different timelines. So every religious belief system has its own timeline. So there's an atheist timeline, Christian timeline, Buddhist circular timeline. They all have their own timelines, right? I think that's kind of interesting.
That's an interesting perspective, and I think that there might be. Okay, so if we take a moment and we go back to the very old writings, wow. Speaking of energy, I bought a kettle just a little while ago, and it will be delivered tomorrow before lunchtime. This is the world we're living in, dude. It's like late at night here. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I just bought a kettle. It'll be coming tomorrow morning. It's just to think of like how the world is moving, like in commerce, right? You can buy anything and it'll be there like instantly. South Africa is pretty good when it comes to deliveries and stuff. Our shopping is pretty jacked up. We've got the best consumer rights as well. But anyway, in South Africa, if you buy something online, all you have to say is it's not fit for the purpose that I bought it for, and you have to get a refund within 6 months. And there's no countering that by law. So you're pretty sorted if you buy things online. But yeah, getting to this giant story. If we go and we okay, so there's different stories. There's different versions of these stories. There's the Oglia, called the Oga. In some stories it's called the Ogia, and some stories it's called the Oglia, I think, Ogiala. And then there's the stories in the apocryphal stories, apocryphal writings. There's the stories of Shemyaza. But there's many different stories. There's the Persian versions, there's the Hebrewic versions, there's the Greek stories. Interesting. Then there's, of course, the stories of the Norsemen, right? And but when you look at the more traditional stories and the Greek story as well, the story of the Grigori, and then of course there's the Sumerian story of the Ijiji, which is the same story as the Grigori of the Greeks. So all of these stories of the giants are there. They're all quite similar. One of the things that's suggested is that these beings came to Earth when they weren't supposed to. The Grigori version, the Greek version, says that they came from another dimensional space. Well, no, it doesn't say that. Well, we can infer that. The Sumerian story is much more tighter writings that you can infer a lot more onto, but they came from somewhere else. Put it as a concept. Then there's the Gnostic stories about these beings that came here. And so there seems to be these stories. Oh, and then of course there's the Indian stories, the Vedic stories of the Rakshas and the Yakshas of the Yakshas of the Persian peoples and the Rakshas of the Vedic peoples, the Indian peoples. And they came with the Ashuras. Well, the Ashuras were responsible for creating the Rakshas in the Vedic stories. But the Asuras are big, strong, powerful beings with supernatural ability. The Rakshas are like gigantic, monstrous beings. Many of them ate humans. Same story we'll get like in North America, right? Of giants, the Navajo tales. And there seems to be a convergence with a lot of these stories that in the one version of the story, it's Michael, Auriel, Raphael, Gabriel, and they got together and they plotted to give these giants a powerful tool. That's where the Tetragrammaton came from in that particular version of the story. And it was given to the giants because they would use it to destroy themselves. And the angels were wise, and they gave them the power to destroy themselves, and they fell for the trap, and they did. So there's the stories of how, and Shemyaza's story version of the story is also that there were traps cast for the giants. Shemyaza and the crew, they called it the Fika Oath in those versions of the story, which is a Fika Oath that came from the divine realm, which was a great power that could be wielded here on the earth. And that Fika Oath, they had these breastplates they would wear on their chests. It sort of makes you think of the ancient Egyptian. What do they call those plates again? I forget. I've got one. It's a plate with inscriptions on it, with that you wear on your chest plate. Mine's a copper one. You were talking about copper earlier, Gaz. I got a beautiful piece of copper, beautiful, made by a very close friend of mine who manufactured it for me, like, I don't know, 4 decades ago, whenever it was. Was it 4 decades? No, not quite 4 decades. 38 years ago. Anyway, and so this idea of these beings got together and they conspired, and they conspired to change reality. They conspired to do something to change reality so they could get access to us. And in that changing of this reality, they trapped themselves in some way. And then they were able to be defeated. And they then could not propagate their bloodlines. But they left a legacy behind of monsters. In Vedic stories, they speak about the Rakshas. And so there were terrible wars fought to get the Rakshas off the earth. And they were described as big monstrous beings with like bloodthirsty, desires and needs and requirements. And in the Vedic stories, they're always going off and they're kidnapping the princesses because they want to breed with them. Because they want offspring, right? So they can reincarnate. Because you need offspring, you need a family tree to come back here. If you didn't leave your roots here, you didn't put your seed here, it's like a tree. If a tree didn't put its seed here, it doesn't have a legacy, a lineage. So if we didn't leave our seed behind here, then we can't come back again. And they need to come back because they've got nowhere else to go. So like they're cut off from everywhere else. This is it. This is their final show for them. And they now don't have access to the show here. But the story goes that they somehow fiddled with physical reality and changed it. So there's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't know if this is true. This is just something I'm putting out there just based on the old scrolls. But that could be interesting with regard to the conversation that you guys are having, because it's sort of maybe the reality that we're living in now isn't the reality that we lived in then. It sort of makes sense on the backdrop of this conversation. Is just what I was thinking while I was making myself a cup of cocoa.
Everything you've just said is happening right now. Like everything you just said, with beings tricking other beings with some kind of technology. Like I was just thinking, yep, AI, like beings sort of like messing with DNA and stuff to do with like bloodlines. Like everything that you were just talking about is happening right now. It's mad. Like I hear so many myths and stories and stuff, like even in the Emerald Tablets. And when we were reading that out, it's like that's happening right now. It's crazy. I'm gonna head off, guys. But yeah, it's been a great show today. Shame I wasn't able to join you a bit sooner, but
Yeah,
I'm tired, so I'm gonna
it was like having you on, man. Take it easy.
take care, guys. Much love. See you soon.
Om Shanti, big love, dear brother. Travel safe to your bed pillow and enjoy your Club Duvet experience. And yeah, man, and have a lovely Sunday. Om
Much
Shanti.
love. Take care. Bye.
You know, it's interesting. While I was like listening to you guys, I'm, took a few edibles and I feel the presence of the Fae right now. And they're just kind of like whispering to me about what I was just saying about like, kind of saying that we're like kind of the Sliz is just basically saying we're sort of both wrong. Like with the Zarfax theory, it's like you have to realize like there's multiple timelines happening here. What we're actually seeing is like a convergence of different timelines intersecting like a knot. So it's like you have the magical universe and the mundane universe. And what's happening right now is these universes are colliding into each other. That's what we're seeing right now. And because they're basically telling me that, like, if you take on like one coherent perspective of what the past is, then you're basically kind of like Zerfixed into one Zerfax channel. I know I'm using some of the jargon here, but it's like to really get that higher dimensional perspective, it's like they're telling me like you got to abandon this idea of a singular past, like coming from a singular past origin point. because it's like I'm thinking about it in my mind. It's like I'm picturing in my mind like the timeline where the giants are real, and like almost like a path, like a mountain path going up to like a plateau, and each timeline being like different mountain paths leading to this plateau that we're currently at. And so it's like Sliz is basically telling me, it's like, no, you got to accept both of these worldviews simultaneously. Rich, you're cosmic, you're still believing in the mundane one, and it's like you have to kind of believe in both simultaneously. And I'm like, oh, that's what I got to do. So I just kind of wanted to add that because I feel like it's an interesting side piece of the conversation that they wanted to kind of fill in on.
I think that does make a lot of sense, that we are in a cosmic super possible future past, and the fact that time's not linear adds an extra spanner to the works, right? Because it's happening in the future, and it's happening in the past, and it's happening in the present, like Toby was basically pointing out, and then it's happening in different ways, right? In different futures. The reason why all these realities can converge is because they share a vibrational synergy, right? Otherwise, they would be repelling each other. And the fact that they share vibrational synergy means that the proverbial narrative of all the stories must be somehow synchronized. So there must be a universality. Is there such a word? Universality? Did I just make a new word?
I think I've heard that word before.
Damn. I thought it was
I
my
think it was
word.
universality, not universality.
Universality.
Yeah.
Sounds salty. Universality.
It is
Is
a
that going to
little
make my
salty.
cocoa taste salty?
It is kind of a salty word.
It does. It's a bit salty. But okay, universality. I don't know. Universality makes more sense, I suppose. Damn, I thought that was my word. I was going to hashtag Chickshish Bush Whisperer, my word. I can't earn that word. Dang, you took that word away from me, Cosmic. Bugger.
I have that power.
Word stealer. That was my word. Oh, word. But yeah, the idea that all these realities have a certain theme, but the theme, like you say, doesn't play out the same, right?
No.
It's like a different, it's a different version of the same patterns of time, and they're all sort of somehow converging vibrationally to have a synergy and a resonance.
Mm-hmm.
So that does sort of make sense, that there could be different versions of the same story, and they're all converging now, but they're all really the same story, but they're not the same story because they're unique. They all each got a unique horn, It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to. I got a little my Zarfex diagram in the. So basically, the idea is this chart, as I mentioned before, the Zarfex interior, this section over here, basically represents physical, mundane reality, and then this side is more the astral. So when I was talking about cryptids earlier, my thing is that the giants and the fae and all this stuff, they exist over here in this area. And you people are claiming that they exist here. That's kind of what I was saying. But the point is, it's like each one of these, because each one of these is also associated with the Zerfike. So the Nezerfax channel, which is associated with linear time, logic. This is the atheist Zerfikes exists in this channel. And then the Azerfax, which is related to shapes, society, building. This is like Christianity and Judaism. And this section, I would say here, is more like this channel is usually like Hermeticism, and Hinduism is usually in this kind of the Slizerfikes channel. Then you have over here the more magical, occult channel, and then you have like this is the ether. But the point is, each one of these channels essentially has a different origin story of the universe. So effectively, each one of these channels has its own unique timeline. So the Nezerfax just kind of like guides all of it, like a fan, blowing, objects in a room, and everything else is just kind of going along with the momentum. But at the same time, there's this one, because the origin story for this particular sector is different than this one. So instead of saying that one is true and one is false, by accepting that both of them, are true like simultaneously, and then you start to see that all these points of view are sort of true simultaneously, then you start to get a real understanding of nonlinear time. And I don't know, I just feel like this is sort of like when I explain things, this chart, see, this is my kind of like your Saturn square. This is like this is my enneagram, basically, my version of that, just like mapping things out and where things go.
So you essentially have 27 different things there, right?
So basically, I think it's about 31 like Zerfaxes total, and about 7 to 8 different channels. I think the thing about the Kid Zerfax channel is it's the same channel on both sides, so it's not distinguished by the two. That's how the two channels can like actually intersect and interact with each other, because it like interconnects them. But yeah, so really it's about 7 different Zerfax channels, each one has a different belief system associated with it that is it goes along with the metaphysical implications of it, right? So like, for example, the knee Zerfax is associated with the atheist materialist Zerfax because this is also of logic, and the universe is very like, it's mathematical, it's provable. So it makes sense that people believe in that exists in this particular channel or frequency. And so each one of these has its different origin points, and then you have an overall more higher dimensional perspective on all of this stuff. And basically, as time goes, my understanding is that it flows from left to right. So it starts off here. So this is the Zerfax. This is basically the Zerfax of basically your physical universe, what you believe in. And then that kind of like pushes through here to the other ones, but also the flow kind of goes like this way and this way. And this triangle at the center represents the self. And the self is it kind of stands in between these two areas, the Zerfax interior and the indeterminate zone.
So what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing 2 categories. I'm seeing one category of 4 groups of 7, and I'm seeing another category of 3. And then on the 4 groups of 7, I'm seeing one is repeating itself. So there's 27 factors, right, with one repetition. So that just locks me into the 27 potentials in the right. In the 28, out of the 28, there's 27 different things that are used in 28 different ways. And then one of those things is repeated again in the big box, which is everything. And then there's another 2 things, but they are repetitions of the same thing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's 27, then I'm seeing 28. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because if I add in the other, then there's 28 different things being used in 31 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
28 things used in 31 different ways, or 27 things used in 28 different ways.
Right.
And that's quite interesting to think of the 31.
I think it's 31.
Because
16,
yeah, just looking at the numbers, the way it comes together.
28. 31.
Yeah, 31. And then there's 2, what I'm seeing as the shape of a surfboard, but that's the same thing repeated, right?
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about this thing over here?
The
or
cosmic
this?
egg. Yeah.
This
I mean,
or
they've
this?
got different letters applied to them, but I mean the cosmic shape, right?
Yeah, the egg, right?
Yeah. That's an egg for a reason, I take it, yeah?
It just happens to be how it lines up. Like, it just happens to be an egg. I didn't plan on it that way, but
right. Okay,
it just
I
happens
get you.
that's just how it kind of fell into place.
Right. So then in that case, we go from 31. Sorry, in that case, we go from 31 to 29. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. I think what also is interesting to realize with the indeterminate zone, you have a sort of an even layout of Zerfaxes over here, whereas the Zarfax interior, which is more the mundane layout, you have these big, larger Zerfaxes kind of dominating the space, and you even see that a lot of these. So the idea is that, so for example, this is like a personal Zerfax. So the A Zerfax is the Zerfax of sort of society, culture, and this is basically your like individual culture, and the U is more like a higher level of that. So this is like a collective culture or like a collective understanding. Likewise with the Nezerfax, this is sort of your logical mind, your framework, and the thoughts that you have in your intellect. Whereas this one represents the collection of all the thoughts that humans have ever come up with before, or at least your understanding of what all people know. So it's not just what you know, it's what you think Albert Einstein knows and Krishnamurti knows or Jesus Christ or whoever. And it's all these. So the idea is like this is what a user facts, and that's kind of a, it's like there's the individual and then there's the group version of that. So it's like a group dynamic. And then they all kind of like melt into each other like this and form into the Uzerfax, which is basically just like pure potentiality of like particles. So depending upon what you believe in, this Zerfax changes, and that creates, and sometimes it's like there's 4 different kinds of Uzerfaxes, and some lean more towards manifesting magical, and others lean more towards not manifesting magical, depending upon what you believe in. And the idea, what's really interesting, is that every time you fall asleep and go into dreamless sleep, this Zerfax basically just like pops and disappears. You go back up into the Phi Zerfax, which is sort of the quantum potential. And then when you wake up, a new universe Zerfax is then manifested, and then you create a new reality. So every day you wake up, you potentially enter a new universe with different rules and slightly different like potentialities. And you can kind of like use this like as divination, or like in the same way, like, you know, astrologers will, you know, pick a specific day to do a spell. You can also kind of use this understanding, okay, which, you know, particular, what Uzerfax am I in? Because there's also the idea of what's called the Vlitzerfax ratio, and that's this Zerfax right here. So the Vlitzerfax is the Zerfax of randomness, or it's the Zerfax that kind of scrambles things up and creates chaos, right? And the idea is that depending upon what Zerfax type this is, it'll make it so this has a strong or a weak effect. So if you want to manifest something into your reality, for example, you have to take it, your intention, from the indeterminate zone and then have it bypass this Zerfax, which basically kind of blocks it off. So if your intention is strong and your magical, you know, energy is powerful, you can bypass this Zerfax and manifest your intention here into the Zarfax interior. That's kind of basically how I sort of understand how magic works.
I can see how that makes a lot of sense. You know, I think though, like for me, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that it can work. I when I consider it, I think of it as being that we're existing in a field of consciousness that seems like matter, and when we recognize that we are not physical, then everything is subject to our will. And all of the magical things that we speak about are just triggers that we use to get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when it comes to physical matter, the Fae think it has to do with this Zerfax channel in particular, the Phi Zerfax channel. So basically, this basically represents kind of like organic forms, like you know, life forms, organisms, even rocks, etc. And this is just like pure unmanifested quantum potential. So I think of it like this. So imagine you have a duck in your mind's eye, a yellow kind of like cartoon duck, right? And it exists in your imagination. And to bring it into physical matter, it's kind of akin to like taking that fluidic, dreamlike entity and sort of encasing it in plastic wrap. And so matter is essentially taking consciousness and enveloping in a black void wrap, like a marble or like basically, or another analogy I think of, it's like, imagine you have a waterfall of like mud or sludge or some kind of like something that stains your clothing, like maybe like, you know, chocolate or something like that. And then you walk through that waterfall, you get covered in like chocolate sauce or mud or whatever. And that's basically how they think consciousness interacts with matter. It's like consciousness is here. It basically, and then it goes through the black sticky stuff, consciousness of the Feezer facts, you know, goes into Zarfex interior and then comes out as particles in the Oozer facts. And that's the idea. So basically it's like you're taking consciousness and condensing it into like a glass like canister. In a lot of ways, it's in the same way that you take like a djinn or a genie and you bind it to like a lamp or a brass vessel. That's how essentially matter is essentially manifested like that. It's like this wrapper or like a container that then gets filled up with consciousness and then creates a form. So I think it's something like that.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense in a way. And I'm sure that there's a lot of different ways to bring that into sort of actualization. But yeah, man, I see where they're coming from, and I reckon, you know, I think that this entire world is a Maya, you know. So like, if I think it's like this, it's got to do with energy. Like if our energy is greater than what we focus on, we can control it, whatever it is. And that energy, what we were talking about, that inner golden spiral life force, that life prana potential, if we accumulate enough of it, then whatever we focus on becomes reanimated by that, depending on our desire and our intention and our saturation of it. And so if we can embrace like a large amount, so that Zerfax that you're speaking of, what's that Zerfax called?
The Feezer facts.
Which one is it? What does it look like?
The one that's like a cross with like 4 circles on the sides.
Oh, there is a mouse on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, I see that.
Right, it's the cross one. Well, that's very interesting that they've chosen a cross, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too because this correlates to this. So this is because it's physical and hard, it's connected by this cross. But here, the circles are no longer have a cross that's binding them together, and thus they can form something different and become fluidic. And because this is like a sort of cold fluid Zerfax. So the idea is there's solid Zarfaxes and fluid Zarfaxes, and the idea is that our Zarfax is partially solid and partially fluid. So the interior is solid, but this part is fluidic, and it basically, we're kind of at the muddy part where the dirt and the water meet together to create mud. Which is interesting. That's where life forms form.
You know, it's interesting when people draw a cross. Now that I think about it, it's interesting that when people draw a cross, they draw it like top to bottom, left side to right side. Now, if we imagine what that represents, right? The left side is a passive side in terms of our energetic system. And the right side is an active side according to our energetic system. So if we're reflecting that, we're sort of basing our anthropomorphic alignment of what we do outside of our bodies according to what's inside our bodies, then and the top side is active and the bottom side is passive, right? So the top side controls the bottom side. Maybe that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but the top side is producing the activity that is encapsulated by the bottom.
Yeah, it's a relationship. So the idea is that this is kind of the Zerfax of form, but this Zerfax animates it. This is the principle. So I had in my other chart that the knee Zerfax would be associated in tarot with the chariot. So basically, if you think the chariot, that's the knee Zerfax, right?
The chariot is in the tarot.
Yeah, exactly. The tarot one.
Okay. Yeah, so just looking at the way people will draw the cross, I'm going to show you another way of looking at that.
All right.
So if you're drawing a cross from the top down, from active to passive, and then drawing a cross from the left to the right, from passive to active, what you're doing is you're symbolically representing something, one thing, that's a single thing that moves from active to passive and moves from passive to active simultaneously. And it meets at the epicenter. Now, symbolically, what I'm hearing is a Taurus. Because a Taurus at the epicenter moves from active to passive and from passive to active. In other words, it's an oscillating field that is expanding and contracting simultaneously towards the center from the center. And that the center of that toric field is everywhere, and the circumference is nowhere. And nowhere, no space, is the center. So the outside becomes the middle, and the middle becomes the outside, and the contraction becomes the expansion, and the expansion becomes a contraction. And so that cross is like a representation of that toric field. So it makes perfect sense that the parameters of a torus are being described to me symbolically in that symbol, which is quite interesting with what you're saying about it. It's sort of, to me, that makes sense. Yeah, I find that really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So we've been going now for 4 hours and 40 minutes.
It's been a long time.
I got to get the dogs out. I got to call the girlfriend. I'm going to see her tomorrow. So it's our day. Well, I usually do. I just get excited because I'm seeing my lady love, you know. So yeah, dear brother, is there anything else you want to throw on the table?
Not really. Good talk today.
That was a fun conversation. I hope you guys in the chat enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed it. It was a double fun convo. And hey, are you guys still hanging around a bit? If you want, I'll put on. If you want, I'll put a voice on from a conversation about sorcery. Only if you guys want. I think it's about 15, 20 minutes, something. Let me know in the chat if you guys are interested. It comes from a conversation, and if you haven't followed me on Telegram, you've missed out in all sorts of content. So okay, I will throw it on. I shall throw it on in the discussion panel so that I can phone my lady love before she goes to sleep and make a plan. But dear brother Cosmic, it's been an honor as always. And I'm sending you big love. I hope you have an absolutely great day.
On, man.
Always, man. Always an honor. And we'll definitely have to do like another an expansion onto this, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can do some channeling sessions at some point. I'm thinking about maybe trying that out. I don't know how.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to interview you, just me and you. How's that sound?
Yeah, that could be fun. Oh, I liked it last time we did it.
Yeah.
Gotta find a good time to do it though.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just have to. We're on Telegram. We'll bounce that around.
We'll figure it
It's
out.
so hard. Well, big love, dear brother. Been an honor as always, and I will put on this.
Knowledge is
thing.
not wisdom, nor is it understanding.
All right. Peace out.
Om Namah Shivaya. Take it easy, dear brother. So I'll put it on for you guys. By the way, let me know whether you're hearing it so that I can be sure that it's being played. And let me see. Do I have a copy of the YouTube story? Do I have a YouTube here? Yes, I do. Okay. So there we go. Seem to have a YouTube on. It seems to be live. I just need to know that it's actually playing. So I'm going to put my volume off and I'm going to put it on. It's from a discussion about sorcery, where I was in a conversation in a group and started pouring out. Anyway, Om Namah Shivaya. I'm here. I shall see you guys in a moment.
Understanding. Belief is not knowledge, so it is neither connected to wisdom, nor is it connected to understanding. For if one considers what is knowledge, knowledge is when wisdom is embedded within understanding. So wisdom is an expression of experience, and the experience of what is profound, when it is applied to the principles of understanding, which is the ability to cognitively relate the various aspects of a model in terms of rational progression and the structure of the being. When one has the experience and the wisdom, one has knowledge, for knowledge is the child of wisdom and of understanding. Belief is something altogether different. Belief is when you take the leaves off of a tree and now you pretend that you know the tree because you have the leaf. You cannot know the tree by the leaf. You can know the tree by experiencing the tree. The leaf is a part of a tree. When we believe, we leave ourselves and our hearts behind. When we leave our hearts and ourselves behind, we leave true knowledge behind. For knowledge has a facet of experience that is applied for it to be considered true as knowledge. Beliefs are delusions. Beliefs are other people's ideas that have been understood without wisdom. To understand something and apply it without wisdom is to believe. Belief is the structure of illusion, and so it cannot lead to the truth. So whether or not one believes for, or whether one believes against, is of immaterial relativity. Immaterial, as in there is no matter that can be understood by belief or not believing. So if belief is the thing that you seek, delusion is the thing that you seek. For knowledge has nothing to do with belief. Knowledge has to do with experience. If it is true knowledge of sorcery that you seek, you should seek true sorcery, and the knowledge will come because the experience will flow. But while the mind is stretching its hands towards belief or disbelief, one cannot know, for one cannot have two masters. The mind either bows to the master of belief or the mind bows to the master of knowledge. If it is true knowledge that you seek, belief should have no place in your mind. The mind should be empty of belief. There should be no master in the master chair. The mind should be waiting for the master of knowledge to appear and take a seat. And when the master appears, knowledge will be there. It will be facilitated through the presence of mastery. This is the mastery of knowledge. Knowledge can only come when wisdom, once again, embeds into understanding, copulating to form the child of knowledge, which is the essence of being. So take all beliefs out of your mind, and you will surely attract the evidence of experience that will be able to answer the questions that you think you need answered. Knowledge is not wisdom, nor is it understanding. Belief is not knowledge, so it is neither connected to wisdom, nor is it connected to understanding. For if one considers what is knowledge, knowledge is when wisdom is embedded within understanding. So wisdom is an expression of experience, and the experience of what is profound, when it is applied to the principles of understanding, which is the ability to cognitively relate the various aspects of a model in terms of rational progression and the structure of the being. When one has the experience and the wisdom, one has knowledge, for knowledge is the child of wisdom and of understanding. Belief is something altogether different. Belief is when you take the leaves off of a tree, and now you pretend that you know the tree because you have the leaf. You cannot know the tree by the leaf. You can know the tree by experiencing the tree. The leaf is a part of a tree. When we believe, we leave ourselves and our hearts behind. When we leave our hearts and ourselves behind, we leave true knowledge behind. For knowledge has a facet of experience that is applied for it to be considered true as knowledge. Beliefs are delusions. Beliefs are other people's ideas that have been understood without wisdom. To understand something and apply it without wisdom is to believe. Belief is the structure of illusion, and so it cannot lead to the truth. So whether or not one believes for, or whether one believes against, is of immaterial relativity. Immaterial, as in there is no matter that can be understood by belief or not believing. So if belief is the thing that you seek, delusion is the thing that you seek. For knowledge has nothing to do with belief. Knowledge has to do with experience. If it is true knowledge of sorcery that you seek, you should seek true sorcery. I have covered very base root introductory concepts, themes, and understandings in my first series 1 of the Bush Whisperers Speak series that you've seen me sharing videos of. That is stage 1. You can't reach stage 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 until you have stage 1 covered. And as with all things, the words speak on the surface, but below the surface of the words are the implications of the knowledge, are the implications that the mind can take and strive towards creating its own knowledge. So knowledge cannot be handed to you. Ideas can be propagated as seeds can be propagated in the soil of the mind and of the heart. And as they grow, the experiential pathway towards knowledge will be uncovered and opened up between all people, and the students will be able to gain that which is relevant and relative and important for the nature of truth to find its place in the heart. But belief is an enemy. So the first series I've just completed is 108 videos. As when you consider a pentagram, there are 2 aspects to the pentagram. There is the 108 aspects to the pentagram, and there are the 72 aspects to the pentagram. For when one considers the mathematics, math being the naked sky that bears the firmament that covers the nature of reality, as the ancient Egyptians worshipped. This mat is fundamental to understanding mathematics, the nature of being. Numerology becomes the language through which all languages have found their base roots. So study numbers and much will be revealed to you. But realize that the mind will grasp and try to create beliefs. One needs to undermine the mental ability to create beliefs in order for the sphere of knowledge to be revealed. And so the first 108 videos are striving to undermine this belief structure, to propagate seeds so that people can generate their own growth of knowledge. For knowledge is an experiential path. And it's like a plant that grows, and you need to water it with the correct nutritional substances in order for the light to create the sugar in the plant. The light being consciousness, awareness, meditation. So fundamentally, if the student is interested in seeing the master, the student needs to prepare the way for the master. Imagine that you wanted to grow vegetables in your garden. You should prepare the soil. Start preparing the soil. Start preparing the ground so that the ground can be ready to receive the seeds. Then a small seed from another plant will act as your seed that will carry the nest of the rest of the propagation that requires building this garden that you wish. So then all you would need is 1 or 2 potatoes, and to cut these potatoes into pieces and to allow them to propagate. Or 1 tomato, and to break this tomato into pieces and allow the seeds to come forth, and put this into the soil. And of its own accord, a small piece of knowledge would propagate much more knowledge of its own necessity, in the same way that vegetables grow from other vegetables. However, the vegetables could not be copied. They would need to grow in their own time, in their own way, through their own sphere. And only once these vegetables have grown, once the knowledge has started to take root in the consciousness, the evidence would start to appear and reveal itself in the same way that the shoots would appear upon the ground and start to reveal the plant from which the nutritional substances would arise. In the same way, the consciousness works. The tree is the emblem of as above, so below. The tree is the fundamental structure of this reality, which is why all the ancient traditions have always considered the tree as sacred. You could say that sorcery is something that one becomes. One becomes sorcery in order to experience sorcery. And in order to become sorcery, one needs to start to walk the path of sorcery. One needs to start to contemplate and consider deeply. Now, sorcery comes from other disciplines, which come from disciplines which come from disciplines. They all come from back in the early times, when the shaman was sitting in the jungles and the shaman was sitting in nature, considering and contemplating the structures of nature, contemplating the nature of the causal experience, considering the connection between the beings, to understand the proverbial chain of life, so that the chain of causal expression can be seen as an expression of the chain, for the chains are the fundamental structure upon which this universe is resting, and we are the fundamental chain running through this universe, manifesting the existence through our being. And our being is a chain of beings that are expressing the unity through diversity. And to understand the manifestational principles of life is to understand how unity becomes diversity. When one's consciousness starts to align with the principles that connect unity to diversity, miracles will start to become available to one. One will be attracted to the sphere where the particular miracles or the particular realities being shifted are to be seen, that are conducive to the nature of the growth of the seed of knowledge within, that the truth can start to become an expression of being. So fundamental is this experiential path that one needs to walk if you're truly interested in understanding what sorcery is, Go and sit in the wilderness. Be in nature. Observe nature. Observe the way in which nature's connection to you moves. Observe the telepathy between beings, between creatures. Observe the powers of the animals in the wild, in nature. Do not think of animals as subordinate or less than you. Understand that all things are created in a systemic, binary fashion that reflects the balance of all things, and that there is an equanimity of perspective necessary to understand the principles. And so equality becomes the fundamental guiding light for the consciousness. To understand that the ant is as important as the elephant, and that the germ in the ground is as important as the tree, and that all things are part of the structure of the relativity of being, then one will start to grasp the ideas of the relativity of consciousness. And the relativity of consciousness is reflecting all these relativities, for the manifestation of reality is the exuberance, the exuberating force of consciousness materializing. The electromagnetic spectrum is a manifestation of the life force spectrum, and the life force spectrum is manifesting through the electromagnetic spectrum the principles of magnetism and the principles of electricity. And when these two principles are bound in the state of harmony and balance, we have the potentiality which is creation as we know it. And life is what binds all of this. Life is what manifests all of this. So when we start to delve deep into the life force principle, we are starting to uncover the secrets of alchemy. The secrets of alchemy are from whence sorcery has arisen. Understanding the principles, the alchemical principles of being, means one has the ability and the knowledge to manipulate these different facets of the being in order to create the manifestational reflections on the physical level of the consciousness field. To change one's consciousness at will is to change the universe, truly. So we can realize that these experiences that we seek can be found in the wilderness, can be found in the forests, in the jungles, in the deserts. And when one enters into deep states of contemplation, considering the nature around oneself, with totality of consciousness, with totality of concentration, with the totality of awareness focused towards the balance of being, the balance will reveal all things. The great sorcerers can be found in the Taoist system. They are very adept these days. Although there are Taoist sorcerers, there are sorcerers that walk various different many paths. They all come from the fundamental stream of shamanism. And the shamanism is understanding the three principles of being, the three worlds, and the way in which the three worlds and the three principles of being are an extension of the consciousness field, which is essentially the chain of life, a chain of beings that constitute the nature of the self. For when you breathe, it is by the virtue of a group of collaborating consciousnesses, a group of beings that are in collaboration in order for the breath to be drawn, a group of beings in collaboration in order for your food to digest. The organs in your body are the extremities of a consciousness field, of a being. Each organ in itself is an entity. Each different form of tissue in your body is a different form of this being's life force manifesting as form. And to understand that there is this correlating feature between all of the things in your body, and the fact that only 6 trillion of the cells in your body are your own DNA, and that the other 12 trillion, more or less, nobody counted, is essentially foreign bodies that help to create the synthesis and synergy of being. And the synergy of being is a reflection of the harmonies of life. So life is about cooperation. Matter is about cooperation. Consciousness is about cooperation, and matter is a cooperation between consciousness and form. And form is the extremity of consciousness. The consciousness field slows down to become form. And it is an accidental reaction. And this is essentially the causal field that is producing these accidents of being, as one could consider it. And these accidents of being are manifesting objects. but they all come from the causal principles, which is a manifestation of the inner emotional, mental fields reacting to each other. And when we start to spend time in the wilderness, we will notice this, observe this. The more time you spend in the wilderness, the more aligned your consciousness will become, and you will manifest, if not a metaphysical guide, an animal guide, if not an animal guide, a human guide. You will manifest someone in the flesh, or someone in the astral, or someone in the etheric, or an animal in either of these spheres, and this will become your guiding tutor. And the tutor will reveal much to you in the natures of the sorcery, in the natures of this reality's construction, and how to manipulate the forces within yourself in order to change what needs to be changed. But there is an obsession with people to get to the end. Sort of like when a man is obsessed with getting to the end of his sexual pleasure, he never fulfills a woman. When a man lets go of the end of that sexual pleasure and decides to focus on the process, that is when the man can teach the woman how to say his name in all sorts of languages very loudly, over and over and over again. And only then can you really fulfill a woman. And only when a man really fulfills a woman does he discover his true masculine power. And that true masculine power is found within the feminine part of himself. And so most men are inactive sexually, effectively. Most women, bless their souls, get minutes of pleasure instead of hours. This is because of this attitude towards reaching the climax, getting to the point. Getting to the point is not the point. The point is not the point. The point is everywhere. And when we realize that the point is everywhere, there is nowhere to get, there is no point to get to, there is no belief to know or unknow or understand or think of, we start to experience reality as it is. When experiencing reality as it is, harmonic resonance kicks in, and the vibrational field will put you where you need to be to see what you need to know, to understand how the nature of this reality has produced what you are.
Gosh, that was a lot longer than I seemed to think it would be. But anyway, you guys survived it. How you guys all doing? I hope you guys did enjoy it. I actually wanted to put on a piece called The Creation of Evil, but I'm only allowed 30 megabytes here. So I put on the 3 clips from conversations about sorcery. But if you go into Telegram and you go to @BushWhisperer and you find my channel and you go into the audio. Oh, by the way, heads up, if you guys haven't found my channel on Telegram, you should have. You really should have. Do you like books on metaphysics, esoteric, and occult? Would you like to find like the biggest library you've ever seen in your life? Go and check it out. They're just there, ready for the download. So go and check it out. Go and take a look and see. The @ sign in front of Bush Whisperer into a search bar in Telegram. I think there's 26,000 something odd books. Some of them are repeats because they're in a few different formats, but there's at least about 22 to 23,000 books. They're all on esoteric, spiritual sciences and the occult. So pretty much most books that you can think of that you might want to buy, that you might want to read, that you might want to get there already. You just got to download them and it's free. So go and check it out. But there's a lot of other content there too. There's a lot of audio content there that you can't find, that you can't get. Audio, some of my music's up there. But there's also audio content that I've gotten from people over the years. Audio content from various different mystery schools that I'm not supposed to have. That I'm not supposed to release. But it is what it is. Life is short. It's not released to, the bulk of humanity. It's a small group of people that are already interested in it. So you can go and find some really interesting audios on there as well. You guys are having quite the conversation here. Would it be great to wake up every morning forgetting who we think we are? It's an interesting concept. the act of forgetting who we think we are is the act of remembering who we are. Is it? Elon Musk, because he thinks he's a musketeer. He's an alone musketeer. Where are the other three? I am a lone musketeer. I didn't bring my two friends. You know? Yeah, a lone musketeer. He was in my school for a little while, by the way. I remember him as a boy. He was only there for a little while. He was an exchange student. He came to Sachs for a short while. And I remember this boy, Elon. And I remember thinking, like, is that boy gay? Sorry, I was a teenager. You know what I mean? It was an all-boys school. I didn't mind gay people. Like, I got on well with like the guys that were gay. I was fine with them. But I remember thinking to myself, is this guy gay? He was a very sensitive child. He must have been, I think he must have been like a couple of years older than me, if I remember. But I was quite wild. I was like, at 15, I was pretty wild. Maybe 14. Could have been when he came to the school. Could have been 13 or 14. I don't know. I was wild all the way through. But anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed the chit chat, the show. And I'm sending you all big love and big blessings. Don't forget to smile. Keep it sweet. Keep it real. And I am actually starting the Enneagram series, just by the way, for those of you that are waiting for it. I've been very focused on work, and I'm actually having to sort out moving home at some point, which is going to be quite sad because I've gotten very used to the penguin sanctuary. But I'll be somewhere near the nature reserve, I'm sure, or near the sea, or someplace nice, where there's trees or mountains. That's what I need: trees or mountains, or the sea, or both, or three, or all. All works out pretty well. Trees, mountains, and the sea. That's a try bonus that I'm looking to manifest. But I'm sending you all big love and big blessings. Take it easy, keep it sweet, and thank you all. Dreadwolf, big blessings. D Love, and Salty, and Gaz, and Salad, and Carly. Favorite sorcery trick? What are you guys talking about? Favorite sorcery trick? I don't know whether there are tricks in sorcery. I think sorcery is like it's too saucy for tricks, right? Sorcery is too saucy for doing tricks. What do they call it? Doing tricks? Isn't that, it's a US version of like what people do, you know? It's quite cheeky actually. But yeah, big love to you all. Take it easy, keep it sweet. And for those of you that are still in the chat, hope you guys, D-Love and everybody else, hope you guys are taking it easy. Don't forget to smile. Life is just so incredibly short. You got to make the best of it. This is Bush Whisperer signing off. Om Namah Shivaya. Take it easy. And till next week, I'll probably be doing a show Monday or Tuesday. I'll be doing a recording next week with a guy called Reiki Zen. Look out for that. He's really cool. I like the guy. He's been on the round table like a few years ago. So yeah, going to be. And if you want to look in the videos, there's a clairvoyant lady that I interviewed. She's very lovely. She's very earthy. She's very authentic. She's very genuine. So I'm doing a series where I'm going to be interviewing loads of different people from different spiritually related walks of life, as well as therapy, herbs, all different sorts of related topics, metaphysically related, I suppose, in a way. So yeah, if you go and look in my actual videos, you'll see that's the last video that's there, because these are obviously in the live, not in the videos. But that was a recorded video, and I'll probably be doing a recorded video every week from now on as well. I got my sights on a number of people. Sending you all big love, big blessings. Keep it real, keep it sweet, and Om Shanti. Don't forget, at Bush Whisperer in Telegram. And that's my actual profile at Bush Whisperer, actually. At Bush Whisperer Speaks is my channel, just so you know, just to correct that. So at Bush Whisperer, you'll find that's where you communicate with me. And at Bush Whisperer Speaks, one word, that is my channel where you'll find the library that I was talking about. Probably, I think, the best library I've ever seen. And I've been curating it over like decades. So anyway, Om Namah Shivaya. Big love, blessings to all of you. And hope you got what you came for. Om.